Welcome to the show, everybody. Mike with Coronavirus Diaries. As you can see, it's a little bit different today. I was able to meet up with Marc Holley at a co-working space in Uptown. Marc, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Second full night of sleep.
So as many of the people that are going to be watching this will be familiar with, things have changed dramatically since the last time that myself and Marc talked. Marc has his own business, Atlas Defense. He does security and awareness training for anybody that is interesting. But in lieu of current events, I thought it would be awesome to have Marc on, and we're just going to bounce some ideas around. So from here on out, it's just going to be us having a conversation. We're going to riff with it. Marc,
Yeah.
So before we came in, we were talking a little bit of permit to purchase, firearms. There's been some stuff where we talked about this before, and now it's extremely relevant. You mind just sharing a little bit kind of what you've heard and what you've seen?
Well, I think that all the feelings behind any of these purchases, before and after the riots, any of those feelings behind those purchases are definitely warranted. And there's nothing wrong with having a plan, having some kind of insurance that you feel equalizes your chances, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't blame anybody for that kind of thing. And I believe it's just a conception out there that this is just a tool, just like a hammer, and anybody can pick up a hammer and swing it and know how to swing it and know not to hit their thumb and know not to do it right. And I think that when you call something like a weapon a tool, that just kind of dehumanizes what the weapon is actually intended to do.
Right.
And I think that all the rage and all the anger that's in the riots is in response to the dehumanization that we've seen across the industry, and not just my industry, but across the police force, across just this fatalistic attitude that, fuck it, there's gonna be 4 more years, right? So why even care now? And that's on all sides. So I think that's one of those things that kind of sparked that anger.
Sure.
And in response, now it goes anger, and now there's fear, and again, that's why I'm not discounting those fears. I think they're very warranted. I just talked to you about that SBR that I just picked up as a bonus.
Sure. Yeah, so you just got yourself into a pretty nice piece of equipment, firearm.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, it's something that I feel is relevant right now, and there's specific threats made against people like myself and Heidi. So that's all. Again, like, I totally get it, and I think that if we kind of linger in that fear for too long, then it starts to perpetuate the status quo of the industry as it is now, and then keeps on making more people fatalistic instead of hopeful for what you may not ever need that gun for. And right now, everybody's buying that gun thinking about what I'm going to need it for. And some of the longest time gun owners always will tell you the same thing, that the best gun they've ever had is the one they've never shot.
Yeah.
Right? Or the one that never killed anybody with. I mean, go ahead and shoot, please. And that's why I take training so seriously, because I know it takes repetition, I know it takes practice, I know it takes judgment development and like cognitive, behavioral, therapeutic techniques that actually help your brain get conditioned to make decisions. And
sure.
When people don't consider those kind of things, then they just stay in that fear state, and then you have issues like people using guns when they're not supposed to, and that can lead to irresponsible storage or irresponsible use.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about going out to just get a gun in response to fear, having very limited or no training for many people. Where are you? I mean, your business is built around training people, getting people competent with a firearm, knowing how to use it, when to use it. In a time like right now, where's your stance on, there is a pretty volatile environment. Right now it looks like it's trending towards a more peaceful resolution. There's some steps being taken legally within the Minneapolis community to do the investigation, going back a decade, I believe.
The investigation, the divesting, I think the money part is a big part of the whole too. And it's something that now that these communities are stepping up and taking on these neighborhood watch duties and feeling responsible for their fellow man, fellow woman, I think that when you combine that uncertainty, that fear, and then that kind of hopeful spirit, that's why all these people are stepping up. What I'm finding out right now, like since yesterday, is that people have always been open to learning, have always been open to contributing to the community. There's just something about, like, if you lived in the city too, like, you never know your neighbor that lives like right down the hallway from you ever.
It's just a different type of
Yeah.
environment than when you're outside
Exactly.
in suburbia or even further in the
Yeah.
country.
And despite how close people live, they're really disconnected. And now that community defense, it's actually, I should go into detail why it's bad to call it community defense, but the community
some might
watch.
see it as like vigilantism.
Yeah, exactly.
or-
Then vigilantism comes up, and I was just over at a friend's place in Whittier neighborhood, and he had a neighborhood watch individual that had a permit to carry. Obviously, had no training, no military experience, no judgment, and one thing led to another. They looked up his name, found that he was booked for riding PC, so riding with probable cause.
Oh.
And he had a history of brandishing his firearm and making up stories about getting into a shootout. So, like I said, he was one of those overzealous kind of guys,
Yeah.
and that is unfortunately, I mean, how I kind of built my business was on that hunch that while there is a large, loud amount of people that are irresponsible about their firearms, there's also a bigger amount of people that want to be truly responsible about their firearms.
Sure.
And that's why I'm almost seeing equal increase in business as you see these gun sales going up. And last time that there were gun spikes in gun buybacks, in gun purchases, I never got a spike in business.
Was it Sandy Hook? I think it's when
Sandy
they were
Hook,
talking
I
about.
didn't get busy then. I don't think I was in business actually when Sandy Hook happened, but I didn't see any spike in value in training or anything. And then throughout the last 4 years, we've had a couple of events that have had people spike in purchasing guns, and like I said, I just never saw a proportional increase in interest in training and learning more and be
Sure.
responsible about it. I mean, I get questions all the time now about how to store a gun correctly, how to practice with it, why maybe a handgun might not be the best first gun that you'd ever buy. Because a handgun is like a miniature, less accurate rifle or a miniature, less accurate shotgun almost.
It's just too accessible.
Yeah, it's really small, and it's like a 3-inch barrel. So, anyways, I digress. I would say just go to my website if you want to learn more about the training. I want to be respectful of your time too. And
Yeah. Well, I just want to. Oh, did you have more?
Oh no, yeah. I mean, there's obviously. I think all it comes down to is just the fact that the common thread that I've seen is that people are stepping up to do what they're good at where they're needed, and that those two things makes you somewhat passionate about something, and that's why I've seen more interest in the training. In my opinion, from what I've seen.
Yeah, somebody had shared something recently with specific to the riots. There's a couple of police cruisers that are burning. You see the ACAB spray painted on it.
Oh yeah.
There's what would appear to be some sort of individual that's that's siding with those people that are burning the vehicles that has
the rifle, yeah.
The rifle,
yeah.
He's all covered, and another civilian, would appear to be a civilian, comes in with their handgun and takes his away. What's your thoughts on that in terms of like
that was the community stepping up again? I mean, one of the books I'd recommend is Out of the Mountains by David Kilcullen, and it goes into a lot of detail on like the city operating as an organism. And if you think about it, the city does have processes that an average cell has, and that's intaking of raw materials and output of ideas and products and services.
Love it.
And when you disrupt things with not just the effects of the coronavirus, but then with the pent-up anger, it just again seems like it was a controlled rage. And of course there are bad actors, and the controlled rage is what kind of from some of the guys I know personally that were down there, the controlled rage helped them help more people too. One of my friends, Dave Jensen, I don't think he would mind me saying his name, was out there he showed up with 3 medical kits, and he just started helping people because he knew that that's what he could do. And what he described going through definitely seemed like a traumatic experience, and that's why he was so angry the first time he got flashbanged, and then the second time he got flashbanged. And if you've gone through a room as you get flashbanged, you know, if you know what you're doing, even you should loosen your jaw and just not grit your teeth. So anytime that the flashbang is coming at you, try not to grit your teeth, don't clench your jaw, relax your jaw, and that'll actually let the shockwave kind of go through you a little bit better.
Sure.
And that it's still going to suck, but I think the natural reaction is to tense up, and that's the last thing you're supposed to do, actually.
I had one pop pretty close to me. It was actually in the middle of a live stream, but it was a pretty profound moment.
Yeah.
There was because I'm all for protesting. I get there's basically like 2 months. I mean, for those watching, this is really the first time I've kind of been in an enclosed space with, just we haven't been in face to face since lockdown, well before lockdown. So now they're slowly starting to ease the lockdown in Minneapolis. Still running around with masks. We're still trying to do the social distancing.
I'm sorry, I've got work always going on.
Yeah,
so keep on talking. I'm not trying to be rude or anything. Yeah.
But so here's where we're at now is moving forward now. Do you mind me sharing a little bit of the work that you're doing with
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, I can go into a little bit of detail because of just the confluence of events that are happening, like I say, in the last 24 hours. And I think that the main catalyst was the announcement that Minneapolis Public Schools is divesting from the protection of Minneapolis Police Department.
They had a contract with
Minneapolis for which they were paying $1.3 million per year.
For how many is there?
For the public schools in Minneapolis.
How many officers? Is there like numbers?
I'm sure we can find the details. And you know what? We'll find the details and drop it in the links. Yeah. And basically, that was $1.3 million a year that they were paying for the RSOs, I think it's called, the school resource officers, okay. SROs, yeah. And probably some other services too. But again, those police officers aren't necessarily trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, social emotional learning, trauma-informed learning, and de-escalation skills. And there's no fault of their own. The police were never meant to be a security force. And I think that's just something that we're slowly becoming disillusioned with right now. And that's creating opportunities within the community. I mean, I know I'm chasing down a couple of pitches right now, and I think that the main misconception and challenge right now is that there's going to be a power vacuum that private security is going, or private businesses overall are going to step in and then start taking control over their own interest. And I think that there's actually a faster community response that's going on right now, and that's why right after this I'm going through a strategy meeting with the community leader and how to go about this. And the misconception about private security before this all happened actually is that they have free reign to do whatever they want, and the fact is that they're actually subject to a lot more restrictions, a lot more laws, actually the exact same laws that the civilians that they're charged with protecting are under too. So there's more equitable justice there. Our guys know anytime that you're doing any kind of armed protection detail, that's for your own safety and the human being that's next to you and nothing else. And
with the private security, so for those of you watching, what's interesting is that Mark and myself have both served as private security contractors in foreign countries' high threat environments, and it was something that we had talked about briefly before we had started this. Is how that was it was a significant moment because you're being held to
layers
to many layers of accountability.
Oh, yeah.
To the point that the last time that I'd ever done a convoy in Iraq, there were so many levels of escalation of force that if you were to have gone through all those layers, that in order to respond to a potential car bomb or something, there's a high likelihood that you would end up taking the repercussion of not acting fast enough. Now that being said, here in the States, the idea of a private security kind of private companies, it is really concerning because you look at the private prison systems, and I hadn't anticipated really going this route, but if you're all right with it, privatization of anything is something that needs to be addressed and be looked at with a magnifying glass. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on maybe some steps if there is a privatized security that's going to be happening now in different communities, how to go about that.
I think that we're going to look at the established examples that are already out there, and there's plenty of small towns and townships and whatnot that privatize their security for their police force, for decades now. Again, I'll definitely make sure I drop some links in the show, or send you some of those links. Let me just actually write that down because
I'll make a note.
Okay, I guess you're recording it anyway, so we'll know. But yeah, there's actually this has already been done with small towns where they basically privatize their police force, and there's there for security reporting. The county sheriff is still there. There's still layers of accountability. But actually, it was usually because of budget cuts, I think, that they ended up having to privatize, and for some reason or other, it ended up being cheaper.
Do you know statistically, in regards to complaints or maybe like any sort of like legalities, how
they're just very
that worked
restricted
out?
on like use of force. I think that's probably the main concern for a lot of people, and that's justified too. I would say, especially after the experience that everybody's had with Minneapolis Police Department, even if you've just been watching what they've been doing during the riots. So there's well-founded skepticism about what private anybody is capable of doing or allowed to. But again, remember that these are just like local people. These are people that are subject to the exact same laws that everybody else is. And I think that being a local stakeholder probably has a bigger, more profound effect than anything else, to be totally honest. Because if you look at Derek Chauvin's case, he lived in Oakdale and he was working in Minneapolis. Yeah. And I remember when I was studying law enforcement at the University of St. Thomas, that was one of the earliest things that they told us to kind of bring right into our heads in the law enforcement program, was that you should never work in the same city that you live in out of fear of retribution for something. And I was like, well, why don't you just not do anything heinous? And
that's a good point.
You shouldn't have to worry about it. So that was like one of those red flags when I was going through law enforcement school at the University of St. Thomas. And after my sophomore year, it was either go to Afghanistan or stay on that track. And I just saw the version of myself on that track that I don't think I could justify to my children or my grandchildren.
I mean, it's tough, right? Because you served, you're a Marine. The idea of like a brotherhood, you're on a mission, dealing with some pretty nasty people, and many cases.
If you don't mind, where I would actually pause, because that right there is a key assumption that you're dealing with nasty people, and that's something that I saw again systemically from the beginning of my schooling in law enforcement. Again, I was military police too in Marine Corps. Was all these shock videos of dash cams of people of color attacking police at traffic stops, and that warrior cop training, that Killology training, all that kind of stuff, just dehumanizes what they're doing. Because if you look at the example of Bob Kroll, he thinks that you should just be calloused, and he's like, oh, I've never had a problem killing 3 people.
Yeah, I just saw that recently.
That was just a big signature contest.
Cold. That's pretty cold. I guess what I would like to say is, in terms of dealing with nasty people, I think we would both be able to agree that you work in the industry long enough, and you deal with some people that just want to see the world burn, right? They're out there.
And that's why I got out after 8 years.
Some heavy duty stuff, right?
Yeah, you've got contracts.
So I can see how, I mean, I'm sure psychological assessments of people that have been in it long enough and gone through enough of these instances, they could have a predisposition or a bias or a prejudice towards something specific. So, all right, so we had to do a quick pause. Conversation went into an area that I'm gonna remove from the conversation for the benefit of both of us. Just in regards to, there's some significant security things that are being addressed in this community, and we can't go too far into detail with them.
And
so with that,
that's the funny thing too, is that there are lots of reports right now, unfortunately, of community watchers that are overreacting. When they just see like one small factor that could make something suspicious, but no pattern of factors. And that's where I've been getting really slammed too with my consulting side of my business, and that's helping the community watch groups get a little bit trained up, learn about things like post orders, learn about basic statutory law and use of force, knowing what their limitations are, getting better at communication. And I think that I'll drop it on my website soon as a download, and it's just a one-page PDF that I'm building out that gives good communication practices, good observation practices, and just treating it like an LPOP, listening post, observation post. And that's a really basic term or kind of way of going at sharing accountability and staying in touch with everybody that's on your block, because we have a huge opportunity right now with how much that the community is stepping up, that wants to solve something, that wants to contribute to the solution, that we would be foolish, I think, to squander the opportunity not to get these people the training that they actually want. And that's why I'm seeing this increase in value in the training that I'm offering, and I'm actually removing a lot of the pricing too. I mean, for the permanent carry, I think it was COVID that made me realize I should just make a sliding scale. And now people have paid the exact price, some people have paid a little bit less, some people have traded me ammunition and cat toys. I mean,
it's a pretty good bartering system we got going on.
Yeah. Heidi and I started watching that Downey's Dickering show, and you learn how to barter and dicker down. And I mean, I get there's always something that you have that I might need that
Yeah.
may not be like cash, and I don't always need cash. So
Because money's based on a system that
Exactly.
doesn't
Yeah.
really make sense anyway, huh?
yeah, so it's just interesting to see how many people are just taking it on themselves to figure out what's equal value, and then they get a lot out of it because the training, the reason that there is a price tag on the training is because it's in depth, it's valuable, it's practical application heavy, and that's why traditionally like my one-on-one classes were $350 because I would travel out to the person in their own home and
Sure.
give them a private lesson. But now I'm realizing that like money is a financial barrier to some of these basic freedoms that I think if I can do anything, I think that I was always so stuck on the idea that you had to make everything into a part of your business, but this is just a public service because I get paid for other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just maybe like 15% of what I do. So yeah, I think it's cool to see how the community is stepping up, and I'm doing what I can. I see you're doing what you're doing, and I acknowledge the bravery that it takes to go out there and be on the move and stuff. So
It's heavy duty. There's definitely a lot of divides. Ultimately, kind of my goal here in the next few weeks is to just take together all the footage, all the things that have taken place, follow through depending on how long this case takes against the law enforcement officers, and kind of I want to build something more than just throwing out quick videos here and there, and kind of basically discuss the variety of divides and how there's a lot of gray area, and it seems like it's difficult to kind of get people into the gray area to see that there are so many different angles to see things from, so many, it's complex.
Well, and I think that with the degrading of our institutions that has been going on for the last 3 years, a lot of people have just started losing faith in institutions, and it's something that we all realize is run by humans. We're all human, and the faith that we lost in the system was because it was run by people just like us. And we're prone to mistakes. We're prone to self-serve. We're prone to be racist. And I think that the less that we acknowledge that, the more we just put up these imaginary walls that we think are there that are really not. And that's why I'll send you a picture actually of my bumper sticker that I changed recently, because I used to feel really virtuous when it said make racists afraid again, because I felt that was warranted. I felt that if they want to terrorize people, I should make them feel terror too.
It's an emotional response.
It's an emotional response, and the only thing it listed was emotional responses on the road.
Right.
And I just went through something. It was strange, but I just came to this realization that instead of making anybody do anything, you could show them examples, or if anything, you would want to make them love. Again, I think that that was the key word that came to me, and that's why I actually permanent marker just wrote "make racist," and instead of afraid, I just put love again. And it's on my car right now. I get a bunch of weird looks and stuff, but I don't give a shit. I mean, it also has EPA and Afghan, so people can't figure it out. And if they knew I was vegan, their heads would probably explode.
I had one of my own experiences, and we can wrap this up. I know you're a very busy individual. When I was running around in the Midway area documenting some things, ended up having an engagement with some individuals that were doing something in the community that I thought was highly inappropriate. And now I know some people are going to justify the vandalism.
Did you step up and...
I said something, got assaulted, the mob turned on me, and what I was curious, because you're a person of color, for those who can't tell, I'm a white dude, but when I went into this, I was actually concerned, because Midway, I live 5-6 blocks south of it, but I'm on the other side of 94, and it might as well be on a different planet, right? Yeah. But Midway is an area I used to live. I used to live literally 2 blocks north on Lexington, from Lexington University, one of the epicenters. Yeah, I know it is. So I walked back over there. Before I get there, though, there were some discussions, people I know, and just saying, dude, don't go there. Like, you're a white dude. You don't want to be in this neighborhood with this going down. And I'm like, I felt obligated. I'm a videographer, photographer, to go and document it. It's my city. So I go over there, and I had this... I mean, talking about color can be very controversial, especially right now. But I get there and I started thinking like, this is like black on blue, specifically because of the George Floyd incident. When that incident happened with me, with these individuals that were, destroying a structure and doing some stuff, and I spoke up, which in hindsight I should have just kept my mouth shut and documented. Something that I noticed is within a very short period of time, on a number of instances, there was another individual actually that was on location, that there was some other folks identifying him, basically saying, "Hey, white boy, get the F out of here."
Yeah.
They addressed me and they're like, "If you're not about it, white boy, get the F out of here." And I'm curious your thoughts. I was in the moment. I just got hit with a rock. I had a mob surround me with a baseball. Like it was intense, right? Like it was heavy duty. And as I was leaving on the live stream, I'm like, so there it is. Like I'm white. I'm not welcome here. And somebody in the comments, rightfully so, and humbly said, "It's not about color. It's about mentality." And I thought like that is this very interesting paradigm that it was because I wasn't in that clique. Like I wasn't about what was happening there, but they were like the color was still a thing.
Well, I mean, and like you said yourself too, I mean, if you were there to document it and then you personally involve yourself at the same time, that, like you said, in hindsight, would you have shouted anything out or brought attention to yourself?
Having known what I know now, I would have been just fine standing. It sucked, man. I was watching my community burn. I understood the anger, I understood the outrage, but I also knew that a majority of that community, like, they were burning down a community that served the minority in the community. And I saw that the next day. I went to a food line that was 2 blocks from that location, and 90% of the people in the line were people of color. It wasn't, it was like, so this idea of like, no, we need justice, we'll burn the community down in order to get it. Mm-hmm. They got the attention. Like, is that what it took? But at the same time, now there's all these people that are out of work. They can't get resources.
Well, and that's the thing too. That's again where I'm seeing communities step up. And there's people. It's the power of social media, but it's also the power of intent. And I think that if you look at the amount of food shelves that are running overload right now, the independent people that are standing up and making their house a collection point, and they're making themselves a target. And I'm volunteering as security at a donation drop-off point because they know that they're being targeted right now. Yeah, so that's why it's one of those things that, like, yes, it is horrible what happened, but yesterday being the first like non-traumatic day, I think I noticed that was like the turning point in positivity. And even before that, there's a lot of people that were donating a lot of food and whatnot. So it does suck, yes, and people are going to be out of work. I mean, my wife was she had to shut her spa down for 2.5 months just for that pandemic. But at the same time, I think that a lot more people are looking forward right now too. And that's why, again, these community leaders are all stepping up in an unprecedented time with unprecedented walls just being removed. Like, I never thought that I would be on the phone with the director of Minneapolis Public Schools Board. And I was, and had a conversation about the unarmed situation awareness meeting and being able to turn that into the violence prevention training that I served elementary schools with for years, and that was one of the blocks that I had in my head too, thinking that, I would never be able to even get in front of the right person because I never could, and I just started to give up, thinking that, like, maybe it's because of me or something. But it was just the way the system worked.
Victim mentality, you changed that, and here you are.
Yeah, and the way the system worked just changed. I didn't realize that they spent that much money on protection from the police department, and like, I can do that training, trust me, for less than $1.3 million. So that's just something that I think.
The same number of schools?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say, I'll have to do some math, but I made everything scalable from the beginning. I got some really good consultation from Bunker Labs.
Outstanding.
That helped me out, and that's actually why we're in this space right now too, is thanks to Bunker Labs. So I feel like if I should name drop anybody, I probably should name drop Bunker Labs and the WeWork community.
Because you've been rolling with them for a while now.
Yeah, I became state leader with them about 9 months ago. And right now, with everything happening, we're, again, like, we got a good directive from Todd, the founder of Bunker Labs, and he sent it out to all 23 cities where there's vets and residents, tribes, and basically point out that veterans, I mean, I should probably send it to you or read it off now, but it's just saying that this is the time for veterans to contribute to their community, to, like, step up and be a part of the solution. And we put a message out from the Minneapolis team to that effect too. And we're assembling resources right now. We're taking FAQs, so if anybody wants to contact me, feel free, and then I'll redirect you guys towards Bunker Lab stuff. But
Sure.
it's for any business owner, and we do realize that minority communities have always been disproportionately affected by the socioeconomic conditions that led to where we're at right now. So I feel like the people that need the help the most are going to be the ones that are going to show up, and you're going to see that kind of trend as far as all the businesses and small businesses that are stepping up right now to solve all these community problems. And it's great that it's going to be minority-owned businesses, but it's going to be local businesses too. And I think that's the other part where people of color can start to realize too, is that this isn't a community isn't defined by race. It's defined by your geographic region, right? It's who your next door neighbors are.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you a local. That's what makes you proud to be a local. That's what made you have that emotional response to that destruction of what you saw.
Sure.
But now people are taking that ownership that they felt, and they realize that the reason they felt so rageful and so angry is because they really do love their community. And they used to never act like it, and that's why you could never know who your neighbor was if you lived downtown Minneapolis. I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, my wife lived downtown for the longest time. She grew up in Northside, and she knew more of her neighbors in Northside, but definitely when she was living downtown, didn't know any of her neighbors. I mean, I barely knew my neighbors in Southside, and that's because one of them was a crackhead that we knew we couldn't feed. I don't think you remember that. If you came to those house parties back then,
Yeah.
we always had to say, yeah, don't feed the crackhead.
So it sounds like what you're saying in terms of, and I'll let you go about your business now. I got you running over a little bit.
I'm okay for a little bit, maybe 5 more.
In terms of people that are listening that are interested in developing community, personal security, self-defense types, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like what you're suggesting is you got to kind of remove the emotions from it, educate yourself, take action,
and redirect the emotions. I think that's you're absolutely right. And what you're describing there is just a alchemization of that anger into ownership. And that's why my brother-in-law has a sign up in his yard. He lives in Falwell, right off 35 in Fremont, where Fremont's a hot spot for a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And he put a sign in his yard that says, "It's okay to be angry." And it is okay to be angry. And I think that the more that we see like those instances where the community is stepping up, putting their lives at risk to take the gun out of that guy's hand.
Yeah.
I think that was extreme ownership. And I doubt that you would have seen that a month ago. If somebody's walking around in the street with a rifle, do you think anybody would challenge that guy?
Well, it's a pretty extreme scenario.
Well, yeah, but like I said, that's because people are taking extreme ownership in extreme circumstances. So that's why, like I said, I mean, there's been a few people that have asked me about the nature of doing that. I'm like, it's a calculated risk. You do what you think you're capable of doing, and if you're not capable of doing it, then find somebody that can.
Then the education aspect of
and that's where
knowing
education, and that's where education and leaning back on professionals and rebuilding that trust in institutions. When you make sure the institutions are local, how can we? And rightfully so. I mean, there's a lot of distrust of Washington because they're half a country away.
Right.
Why not just turn to your local experts that are on the ground that are stepping up right now? And I think that's the coolest thing about all this community involvement that's happening right now. People that used to never be community organizers or advocators are doing what they can with what they're good at. So
I will say that
I'm hopeful.
In the last week and a half, I've had some paradigm shifts of my own and some new understandings that have come to light in terms of how to get more involved, how to use my own experience and knowledge, and it's exciting. It's exciting to kind of see where things are going. There's a lot of momentum happening right now, a lot of positive changes that are happening, and a lot of people that are stepping up and offering olive branches. And it's going to be great to reconnect with you.
Yeah.
I think we can just cut it here, but I will definitely be looking forward to touching base with you again here in a few weeks and kind of see what's been transpiring with your own initiatives, and then we'll maybe have a little more information on what's going on in our community in terms of what triggered all these events with the George Floyd murder. So, Mark, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate your insights.
Thank you, and I think that if we end this on anything, it's just out of respect for George Floyd. I mean, that's the individual that was the event, the murder that had to set all this in place. It's horrible that had to happen. And the reason I say it had to happen was because it was a result of the conditions that allowed it to happen, that
have been going on
borderline encouraged it to happen. So that's why the community's seeing the mass pull back, and stay safe and stay healthy. Get tested if you were at a protest.
COVID,
Yeah.
there it is. Later, y'all.
Peace.